Well, Heather, we're back. Another episode of Can I Have a Word with You? Bruce Pulver and Heather Carter just get together once a week and kick around some words. And, I don't know, sometimes we know what we're going to talk about and sometimes we just kind of let it flow. And
Mhm.
this might be just one of those let it flow days. So this is episode close to 50, 49, I think.
Wow,
We're coming up
man.
on a year.
Well, I always wave at people, and then I realize, not everyone's probably watching us. Hopefully, they're not. But you say hi, everyone, and I just stand here like a weirdo and wave at people who probably are just listening. So, hi, everyone.
Well, this
I'm
is so much
here.
fun. Heather Carter, heathercarterwrites.com, author of Soul-Selfie and Soul-Selfie hashtag no filter, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Bruce, author of Above the Chatter, Our Words Matter, and just loving the opportunities to speak and to share and to do workshops and, get out there and talk about things that, have helped our lives and improved our lives through the messiness. And all glory to God that has helped us kind of work through things. And he's given us each a sort of a platform to share our stories and how he's had such an amazing impact in our lives and encourage others to just pay attention and maybe step in and see what that can mean to them. So it's great to see you,
Hmm.
and we're gonna another episode today, and we landed on the word granted. And it's I'm kind of as I'm doing my writing each day, and I'm finding more and more words where I look at them and there's not an obvious meaning. Like, in fact, in many cases, there could be an opposite meaning to me. And
Yeah.
I want to unpack this word with you and just see, because we didn't really talk too much about it before we got going here. But the word I landed on for us to unpack today is the word granted.
Well,
And
I grant you permission to tell us about that so that we know which direction we're going.
okay, the
Isn't
granted
that
is
nice to me?
indeed.
It's nice.
Well, I thought of it two ways in my life. And sometimes we do this, and sometimes we feel this coming at us. And the first way I looked at granted was taken for. And
Mm.
it doesn't have to necessarily be individually us feeling, where someone may have disrespected us or we were assumed that we would be there. But what things do we take for granted? Whether it's in our faith, whether it's in life, whether it's in having to handle everything ourselves, and those kind of things. Just taking things for granted.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a good thing, like the love of your spouse. You've had that like unconditional receiving, but by itself, if we just take things for granted, if we take that for granted, it can, I break it down vertically. It could be things like, well, there's a feeling of greed, or greedy would be the G. And
Mm.
regardless of the situation, I am getting that. Like I deserve it, right? That would be one way to look at granted
Mm.
as well from a taken from standpoint. Or it's assumed, like I assume that you will take care of that thing for me, or that you will be here, that you have no other things that you need to take care of. That could be a boss, sort of subordinate relationship sort of thing. Narcissistic kind of comes up as the end for granted when you're just assuming you're taking things. It's all
Mm.
coming my way. It's all revolves around me. And I mean, we're all that way sometimes. I think maybe our kids can be that way at certain times in life as well. So as parents, it would plug in and be aware of that.
Mhm.
The T is taken as owed, like a thank you isn't merited. If something is taken for granted, like I assume that's going to happen. The E is expected, like, yeah, of course you're doing that. Of course I get that, or of course that's coming my way. I did all the work, so I get all the benefit, and maybe that
Mhm.
doesn't always happen that way. And the D then in granted is demanded, like I just pictured the temper tantrum of life sometimes that we go into. So
Mhm.
oh, we can all, I think, fall into that scenario of maybe being less intentional and just sort of taking a lot of things for granted. I'll stop there before we flip to the other
Mm.
side. What do you think about that?
Yeah, those are good. That was a good acrostic for that too. And when you say all of that, the word that comes to my mind that sounds like all of that is entitled. We deserve, somehow we're owed, or we deserve, or on both sides. Either someone's taken us for granted, and so we feel like a victim of those types of people, or we do the same thing in other to other people or in other situations.
Yeah.
My initial response was, I want to talk about the one about feeling taken for granted, because we always like to play that card. Like, yeah, no, my spouse doesn't appreciate me, or these people don't appreciate me, or whatever, because that tends to be our probably more apt to think of us as victims of that, as opposed to thinking of all the areas that I do that to other people. Like, for example, I'm staring in my laundry room right now, um, just to burst anyone's bubble if I'm anywhere really romantic. And there's piles of laundry in my laundry room that are clean, and I did not do any of that. My husband did all of that, because at one point, I said something like, "Oh, if you don't like the way it's done, then you can do it yourself." And he did. So it worked, I guess. But I take that for granted. Like, all of a sudden, I don't have any clean socks or workout pants. I'm like, "Where's all my laundry? Where's that laundry fairy that's supposed to get my laundry done?" So I'll probably have to go tell him thank you after I get done with this.
Yeah. That's so, that's so true that we can we can bask in not being taken for granted. And someone told me once that, and this is, I don't know, let's folks chew on this for a minute, because this isn't an easy thing. Bruce, you have to give up the right of being offended. You have to give up the right of being offended. Like, meaning, if I'm taken for granted, does that offend me? So there's also the reaction of that feeling of having someone take you for granted. And there's probably the reverse of that too, is at some point we go, oh man, I really took that person for granted. Or maybe we have an unawareness of it. So the fact that you're going to do an appreciation on the laundry, not that your husband
Mhm.
expects it, but it sure is nice to put that out there and say thank
Yeah,
you.
I did mention it on a podcast, so maybe I could just have him listen to the podcast.
No,
Have to say
I
it.
don't think that counts. I think you got to kind
Okay.
of get in there and let it happen,
Okay.
right?
All
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
absolutely.
you're probably right. Probably
So let's
better.
look let's flip this the other way, because when I think of God's grace, and I think of we are, we'll date this, we are the week after Easter recording this podcast. To
Hmm.
me that just means that, I mean, the sacrifice, and not just the sacrifice, but knowing that this was the plan for him, for Jesus, from day one, like early, like he knew, right? He knew that why he was coming here. And in only, I think, in one place in John does he say, if this can be avoided, I'm using paraphrasing,
Yeah.
please, not my will, yours, because he was right there. And with that, we are granted so much without doing anything. I mean, and sometimes maybe we do take
Mhm.
that for granted, but the grace that we receive by Jesus dying on the cross and us believing in that, and him, rising again, completes the promise of reuniting with God through his son Jesus. And
Mhm.
man, that's something that when I think about personally granted and receiving something as a gift, right? You write a grant request and you earn the grant, right? That sort of thing. Or you are granted, some level of income or bonus or something like that. Now you earned that, but it is given to you, receive that as a gift. So I looked at it totally differently, writing it the other way, with
Mhm.
G being, when you receive something as a gift, the G is grateful, right? That would be the other part of having something received and granted to you, respected. Wow, I mean, when you get a gift from someone, especially if it's something that means something from them,
Mhm.
man, just it's almost like you receive it softly. I got my hands up here, almost like you receive it softly. It's like catching a water balloon in your hand softly, because you can tell that someone has gone to an effort to for you to receive this as a gift. The A is, appreciative. Thank you, a gesture, as opposed to expected or assumed, right? Is a flip of that. Um, on the N of taken for granted was, I wrote narcissistic, right, or narcissist. And the N on received as a gift is not but for grace. I mean, when you receive a gift that it's a surprise or unexpected, or you don't believe there was something you did for this. I mean, to me, it's just it's an aspect of grace. The T is
Mhm.
thankful versus taken as owed. A thankful heart, right? And appreciative. Not that you have to give back and do a one up or an equal. You sometimes the receiving of a compliment that someone has granted you, the thank you and the compliment is really the best response, rather than, oh no, I just lucked into, or because folks really mean that heartfelt, and so you're receiving that as a gift. Thankfully, the E is embraced. I mean, if I am granted a gift, man, there's just it, you know some of the speaking we do, they come to us because folks want us to come, and to me that's such a gift to receive that opportunity, and such a responsibility too, to pour back into others when
Mhm.
we have that opportunity to speak. And then the D, as opposed to demanded, is just deeply moved. I mean, think back when you get a something granted to you as a gift in some way. How does it move you, and what
Mhm.
does it make you want to do? For me, it makes me want to find an opportunity where I can give forward, or in another area, or to someone else. So
Mhm.
just two ways to look at the word granted, whether it's, I'm taking it for granted, or I'm receiving something as a gift. So talk to me a little bit about the receiving as a gift part from your perspective on granted.
Yeah. Well, I love that kind of juxtaposing those two because um, I think with grace, particularly, we do. I tend to take that for granted that this gift that I've been given freely that I didn't deserve. Um, so it's I don't know, just that concept kind of grounds me into I don't know, just my place in things. I tend to think in the world that I'm owed something, and people are taking me for granted, or I have the rights. Everybody's all about their rights these days. And then we get from God this free gift of grace, and we take that for granted too.
Yeah,
Um, it's a
really.
humbling reminder for me, I think. Especially Easter was like that for us this year. I think this was one of my favorite Easters because my husband and I, we both woke up, we put on like Easter music, whatever that is, hymns and things like that on Pandora actually has an Easter channel. So it had all kinds of grace related and Christ is risen related songs, and really tried to embrace what happened on that in that event and how that changed our lives. I felt like we really tried to relish it, but I don't do that every day, and it's available every day. It's a reality every day.
Yeah, we're granted that every day. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that, and this really opened my eyes and really helped me grasp more of the meaning of this period of time, was to read the book of John, especially
Mm-hmm.
the last 4 or 5 chapters, when everything that had been prophesied was coming to happen, and it just
Mm-hmm.
was so powerful to me that we're granted this gift. Man, I guess I would say, if that were me, would you know, you go, okay, well, it's not, right? But at the same time, to kind of say, wow, this was such a bigger than anything that we could even imagine or have ever seen before at that time. If you
Mm-hmm.
think um, what was granted to us through, you know,
Mm-hmm.
sacrificing his life for us to be redeemed, all we have to
Yeah.
do is believe it and
And
move
I
forward.
think if we can keep perspective and keep that at the forefront of our minds about this great gift that we were given, then we're going to be more it's going to be more natural for us to extend that, to grant that grace to other people in how they treat us or the rights that they
Yeah,
stomp on that we think we have. I remember a friend of mine saying, basically, you can be right or you can be happy. If you're just always out trying to be right and fight for your rights and get your way and make sure you're not taken advantage of, that's a really exhausting way to live. And if we're always feeling like we're taken for granted and that kind of thing, so I don't know. That's a big word, Bruce.
Yeah. Well, it's something that me, my mind kind of looks at words and say, okay, what could that mean? And could it mean something different? And
Yeah.
it's sort of why I really like to unpack these words with you, because we get two different perspectives, and maybe there's something there that folks agree with, maybe there's some things there that folks want to challenge, and that's equally as good as well in the comments of the podcast. So why don't we
Mm-hmm.
bring this in for a landing? And I'd much rather be considering things granted as a gift than ever take anything for
Mm-hmm.
granted. My dad used to tell me, Bruce, it's best to be a pleasant surprise than a foregone conclusion. So show up with some gratitude, show up,
Mm-hmm.
receiving anything that's been given to you with grace, and look for ways to give back and to pay it forward.
Mm-hmm. I think that, Jesus, when he was on earth and how he modeled what he modeled for us to live is to be the kind of person that grants grace to other people also, that we're understanding and compassionate and knowing that there, but for the grace of God go I. And so I think it's a wonderful model to live by and to make it part of our nature, that we are gracious because it's in our nature to be gracious because we are taking on the nature of God in us.
Yeah. And no matter
I don't
hard
want to.
that is, right? That is really hard. And we're not talking about stuff that's like, hey, aren't we all this way all the time? And no, we're not. I say I'm a mouse
Yeah,
in my laboratory, right? I'm a constant work in process. And
yeah. When our ego gets in there, we, gosh, we want to be right. I see that in myself all the time. I want to be right. I want to be considered. I want to be people to be grateful. Um, and that's not how Jesus lived his life at all.
yeah, yeah. So Heather, as we wrap this up, how do folks get in touch with you if they want to read more about your blog, or want to get
Mhm.
copies of your book, or if they're interested in having
Mhm.
you come out and do a talk or a workshop?
Yeah. So you can go to heathercarterwrites.com. My email is on there also. I do women's speaking events, and I have a couple books, Soul-Selfie and Soul-Selfie #NoFilter, that I'd love for you to check out. Also on my site, you can sign up to get my latest blogs, which I usually write once a week. You'll get those in your email. So lots of different ways you can find me. What about you, Bruce?
Well, Above the Chatter, Our Words Matters, title of my book, but it's also the website, abovethechatterourwordsmatter.com. I got a contact me page out there. You can look me up on TED.com. Just type my name in the search, or in YouTube, Bruce Pulver. My TED Talk will come up, and some of the other podcasts that we've guested on and things like that. And bdpulver@yahoo.com is direct to me, but you can also contact me from the website. Above the Chatter, Our Words Matter. Would love to serve anyone out there that's planning a corporate event, want to pour into their staff, want to pour into their teammates. And one of the things we're really trying to do is when we go to a city and speak, we are finding a way to stay an extra day. And where can we go to speak in the community? A homeless shelter, veterans group, church, a school, anywhere where folks need the power of a word. We kind of go through this, we unpack some words in our talks, and we just kind of break it down and try to pour a little bit of positivity and encouragement. And, we try to grant this as a gift, which has been given to both you and I, the ability to write and to
Mm.
look at words and break them down differently. So, best way to reach both of us. So, until next time, thanks
All
for having
right. Bye,
me.
everyone.
And I have a word with you. Take care.